And so he was doing a thing with
You can't tell the difference. Okay.
YouTube later.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
Well, and that's
But
what
also,
I've known people that have actually have been working with a slower working heart for years, and then they get a pacemaker, and they're like, oh, wow. Yeah, they're like, I didn't realize I had slowed down that much, you know what I'm saying, because it's more progressive. More mental. Well, as long as the child, as long as he feels better. Yeah. That's the one thing to do is, I can't imagine not being able to catch your breath and understand.
Test. Hello. Hey, there I am. I didn't have me any fancy intro music tonight. Yeah, my bad. Apologize. Me. It's funny. Wearing the face mic, you turn to cough, doesn't do anything. So, okay, well, this is an issue that we've touched on in several different ways in the recent past, because I think it's something that's really pressing. It's something that occupies my thoughts and my time, and a lot of the stuff that I follow and listen to. And so I think it's something that's also very important that we are aware of. You know, as we were talking about on Wednesdays about progressivism, right? We had the myth of progressivism, the idea that the world is progressing towards a particular goal, a gooder, better, brighter future, and we need to be on the right side of history to get there, kind of stuff, and how this is a religious belief. This really is very much like a cult. If you look into the way that cults entrap people and groom people and draw people in, this whole social justice, progressivism thing, it operates, especially the gender stuff, it operates very much so like a cult. And it's one of those things that, you know, we tend to, make sure we're aware of the kind of religious flavor of the culture that's going on out there. Back in the 80s and 90s, the big deal was New Age and some other, cults springing up and that kind of stuff. In the 2000s, Islam was a big deal and everybody wanted to study and know about Islam. And then on the heels of that was the new atheist movement, and, where there's this rabid pro-science, anti-faith kind of movement. And so that's where a lot of things focused. Well, right now, the kind of up and coming, kind of in the spotlight religious view out there in the world is this, what you could call social justice or progressivism, and everything that kind of falls under that umbrella. It's we've talked before about its roots in Marxism and how it all kind of branches out into whether you're talking about critical race theory or gender studies or whatever the thing happens to be. It's the exact same model of viewing things as oppressor and oppressed, privileged class, oppressed class, and the whole system is wrong and we got to turn it upside down because that's just, we have to tear down the power. It doesn't matter what's true, as we'll see in the way that we're going to watch a little video here in a little bit. As we'll see in the way that things get presented, truth doesn't actually matter. It's the way they view things, or that the people who are empowered determine what is true. Not that it's actually the way the world is, it's just that's what they said. And so that is kind of what's going on and why I feel so, pressed to address this issue and make sure we have a good understanding of it, because this is what is out there. This is what we're encountering. This is what we're engaging. This is what people believe. And even if it's not quite so much in our area, it is there. It's a national thing. You can't get around without running into it. And you probably definitely know people who are influenced by it, if not sold out true believers. And so, excuse me. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to do this by way of watching a video where this professor, his name is Peter Boghossian. He is not a Christian. He actually wrote a book called A Manual for Creating Atheists. He is very much anti-religion. However, he's also very anti-woke, SJW, all this kind of stuff. Well, one of the things that he does, and it's always interesting to watch, especially whenever it's people you don't agree with, one of the things that he does is he does what he calls a reverse Q&A, where he goes out to a campus and he gathers students. It's usually hosted by some campus organization, so they already are inviting students to it. And he lays out, I think it's either 5 or 7 lines on the floor for your position on a particular claim, whatever the claim happens to be, whatever the issue happens to be. And then there's neutral, and then slightly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree, right? It goes out by like that, with strongly disagree over here and strongly agree over here. And then whatever the issue is to be discussed, he puts it on the board, and then 1, 2, 3, go. And the students go to whatever their particular line is, and then discuss why they agree, why they disagree, why slightly, why strongly, whatever. And some move about. It's just a thinking exercise in order to express what you believe and justify it and talk it out. Just to give you an idea, here is the
primary
video.
Mission of
Wasn't ready yet. Here is a video of how this works, just to give you an idea of what was going on whenever some social justice advocates disrupt what he had going on. And so this is the kind of thing that he was in the middle of doing.
the primary mission of the university should be social justice. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. Oh, wow, you moved. I didn't even say anything. You're your own intervention. Wow, okay. So, sorry, I have this thing. So the primary mission. So you slightly agree. Tell us why you agree, son.
Okay, see, so that's how that works. And he does it. He's been going around different universities and colleges and stuff and doing that. And it's really interesting to watch some of these. And then people just discuss. It's like, and the idea, his whole idea, and it's funny because he doesn't like Christianity, and because his whole thing is, can you defend and back up and justify your beliefs? And he thinks Christianity can't. And so that's one of the reasons why he isn't a particular fan of religion in general. But that general idea of, hey, let's talk about it. What do you believe? What do I believe? Where do we disagree? Why do you think that? Why do I think this? Let's talk. And so that's what he tries to facilitate. And so that is what is going on whenever he gets interrupted because of the issue that is on his sign. The issue that's being discussed is the issue of gender. He's having students react to the claim that there are only 2 genders, right? And then they go to their lines and then they discuss. Well, some people had a little bit of a problem with that.
What would it take for you to move, not all the way over there, just one line, just one line?
I guess if they told me how many genders specifically there were, I can't think of anything that would change my opinion, I guess. But if you got some friends,
Oh, you're giving me the finger? Hi. I'm standing in front of the social work building.
You're harming individuals.
I'm harming individuals by asking that question. Well, you want to come down and have a conversation about it? Why do you want to come down and have a conversation? Oh.
Notice that last thing they said, we're going to come down and disrupt you. They're going to come down and disrupt. And I don't know how much y'all been paying attention, but this has been going on for at least a decade or so, where students on a campus have a speaker, have some kind of event going on where, not that there's anything bad, it's just they don't agree with something and they go to disrupt. They protest, they come in, you're right there, they buy their tickets, they can get into the hall and they blow air horns and they chant and whatever, anything to disrupt and not allow the ideas they dislike to be spoken. And so That's the idea of what you have going on here. That's all he was doing. He was out there having this discussion, right? Agree or disagree. Okay, you chose your, now defend your position. And as he's doing it, even though he does have his own views, he's being very neutral and just letting, he's just asking questions to get whichever side to defend and justify their beliefs. He's not pushing anything. He's just creating conversation. And so, but they could not seem to let that stand.
Excuse me. Hi, I'm so curious about what's happening out here.
Oh, it's a critical thinking game where we take a look at claims and you step on a line. You want to play?
Well,
You want to watch the game played?
well, we were watching from up there actually because we happened to see the sign from up in the School of Social Work, which is on the 6th floor, and some of our trans students saw the statement. There are only two genders.
Well, thanks for coming down to talk.
It was pretty activating and upsetting not knowing the context. We thought it was sort of a statement that was being made, but not a thought exercise necessarily.
Would you like to see how the game is played?
No.
No. I think we
Is it
understand
something that
Yeah.
should be a game, though?
An exercise? You want to use defund the police as one?
Well, just thinking about what it looks like.
Yeah.
What does it look like
To
to
the
see
whole
like
community.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 white men with a sign that says there's only two genders? You could have been like the Westboro Baptist Church, bro.
What is white? Why did you identify us on the basis of our race?
Well, are you the best people to be hosting that dialogue about?
No, but you,
Representative of that community.
okay, but I asked you a question. Why did you identify me and these people on the basis of their race?
What it looks like, right? Kind of like that activating, triggering aspect of it all.
So you think that it's morally acceptable to identify people on the basis of their race?
It's not a moral question. It's a matter of like the fact
It's
that
just
those
about power
identities
and privilege.
exist.
Yeah.
And identity and representation, right? So if you have queer folks out here asking those kinds of questions.
Well, how do you know we're not queer?
That's true. I don't know, but there's not sort of a representative, holistic, inclusive feeling, especially from up on high. We're looking down and we see this statement being made. We're curious about it. We're also just worried about the harm being done to passersby.
What is the harm?
So there are
What's
people
the
who
harm?
people who went home because it was so
Yeah.
triggering and
We had some
activating.
students.
So I think the end result is
You know you're on film, right?
that is totally fine.
Okay.
There are real people who are really hurt by this statement. So I think
What were they heard about?
question that. Because that's not how they identify, and so it seems like a really triggering statement to just say there are two genders, if that's not been your experience. So it's very harmful and very hurtful, and there's human lives that were affected, so I think that's the message we're trying to send is to maybe consider the questions that you're asking or posing before you begin your thought experiment.
Yeah. So, and kind of, I guess the prompt I meant to give you initially is, to pay attention. What are the things they're saying? What are the things that kind of stand out to you? Though I think you probably didn't need that prompt. What were some of the statements, some of the things that you're just like,
Oh, guys are white.
yeah, well,
That means you're triggering people. You're full of hate.
yeah, goes straight to the white. And what I found really interesting about that one is, whenever he's like, well, why is that important? Why did you identify us by our race? Right. And said something about, why is that morally relevant? And, what was it? He said, it's not about morality. It's about power and privilege. That's a key. And as we've said many times when we've covered, issues dealing with this belief system, that is how they view the world. It's one of those things where we have to understand that they view the world through the lens of power dynamics. All social relationships in their mind is in the context of there's a power relationship. Someone has the power, someone doesn't, and that's how they view these things. And that's why it would even, it's like, it would not even enter my mind to think, oh, these are white people here, and there might be some kind of image that it gives off of some kind of power.
When they're on a college campus,
Right, on a college campus.
I'm assuming they're all college students.
Actually, I think some of those there,
Playing field there, you know what I'm saying? It's not like you're in.
they would disagree. They would say, no, you do not have a level playing field.
Somewhere where you have all kinds of people or groups, you know what I'm saying? They were on a college campus, who's there? College students and professors.
And I would also say that, the and I haven't verified it, but 33% of, of students that go to college, 33% of whites go to college.
And what, now it's a lot of
37%
first
of
generation,
blacks go to college.
in the family.
76% of Asians go to college. So it's like, well, the minority is the white people in college.
Yeah.
And also, if you look at the spectrum of race in the LGBT, particular T, not a lot of black people. Not a lot of black people.
Not a lot of black people. That's true. Not a lot of black trans. And I mean, so one thing, and I noticed a few of you picked up on it, is they keep talking about harm. And he's like, well, what's the harm? You notice they weren't able to actually articulate some kind of harm. That's going to keep coming up over and over again. Where there's this harm, there's this harm. What I find really interesting, one of the things that got mentioned is they said, just with your sign, it looks like you're making a statement without any of these context clues. We just see the sign, and that's triggering. And I'm like, you're an adult. When you see something and you don't know the context, you go find out. You don't just automatically get triggered and offended. And I mean, that just blows my mind. And again, that's something that will get repeated multiple times about, well, the way it looks, these white men standing around with a sign that says only 2 genders. I mean, that just looks hateful. It's like, you have no idea what's going on. Why are you just automatically assuming that and that it's about power and privilege? And
That's exactly what I was saying. I think it's like, that's public policy. You have a legal right to be there. Police cannot remove you without you breaking the law. And so they come down saying, oh, it's about privilege and power. It's like, wait a second, you're taking control of public space. You are excluding. Who's exhibiting the privilege of power here?
that is true. And one thing that's really interesting about this kind of ideology, this movement in general, is that their whole thing is about power and privilege and, oh no, the oppressed, but they literally hold the power in most of our cultural institutions. Progressive social justice kind of ideology is the more dominant, more prominent ideology in Hollywood, in music, in universities. I mean, and more in corporate America. It's all over the place. They actually have the power.
Those that hold the power don't want to relinquish it.
Yeah.
They don't want to get any opposition.
That must sound like they're oppressing others.
I think so.
Well, and there's an essay by Herbert Marcuse. I forget if you pronounce the last vowel, called repressive tolerance. And the idea put forth in there is that there's certain ideas that even by just allowing them to be voiced, they create intolerance and oppression. And of course, the bad voices are the conservative voices on the right, and the good voices, no matter what they say or what they're doing, the left have to be encouraged and promoted. And that was a popular essay back in the 60s, which still holds very much sway over the thinking of this.
Everybody didn't take part.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to.
He's out in a public area. I mean, he probably had to get permission.
You've been offered a different profit. That's
Mm-hmm.
fine.
And that's one thing I found really interesting is, one, they came out and he's like, oh, well, no, we're not making a statement. It's a critical thinking exercise. Do you want to know how it's done? No. Okay. Well, we don't have to do this topic. It can be any topic. Did not want to hear it. Weren't even, just right past it. Yeah. It was, yeah. That's a good point. It was their space and he needed to leave. Him and his offensive sign.
It's kind of, if you think about it, like from a military perspective, they have the high ground. They're out looking over their space, their dominion. And if they think they like somebody, they can attack.
Yeah.
Their space.
Yep. He was making a successful, beachhead,
Right.
and they had to go put an end to that. One thing I thought was interesting, and maybe it's just because I've been reading and listening to a bunch of this, I'm trained into certain buzzwords. Whenever I loved whenever he said, well, how do you know none of us are queer? You know, so it's, oh, well, I don't. But it doesn't look like it's representative of an inclusive environment.
So if they had some other races in there, it would look inclusive.
And I'm like, what would make it look inclusive? Because, well, you know, it's like, okay, well, what if you had a black guy? Does that mean it's inclusive, or is he a token?
It's suddenly okay.
You know, because if you agree with them, then it's inclusion. If you disagree with them, he's a token. You know, and so, but inclusion, that's one of those things to always look out for, because what they mean by inclusion is not everybody be included. It's only people that agree with them that get to be included. If you're not on board with their ideology, you get to be excluded. And so, okay. I think all in total, these clips are about 12 or 13 minutes, and they're in little 30-second to 1 minute bites. So let's move on to the next.
Are you curious about like what we're bringing to you at all, or do you have?
I'm thinking about, I'm extremely curious and I'm extremely respectful. I genuinely respect the fact that you came, as opposed to 7 or 8 of you giving me the middle finger and saying, fuck you to me. So yeah.
What do you gain from this? Like, what is your reason that you just want to cause trouble, or like why are you here?
So I'm fascinated, I do street epistemology, and I'm fascinated if the people, epistemology is from the Greek, basically how you know what you think. Okay, so street epistemology is taking it out of the university and bringing it into the street. So I'm very curious. Okay, a sidewalk or a...
This is like 20-year-old.
This is like street epistemology. You're doing this on the
Okay, if you don't like the word street, you can call it plaza epistemology, whatever. But the idea is you take it out of the university and you see if the reasons that people have for things justify their confidence in it. So this is a confidence scale. We can do this with any claim you want. We can do this with a mayor of the city. We can do this with should the United States be funding Ukraine? I think it's $800 billion. Should the United States, is it more important to control inflation or employment? And we put people on a spectrum. They start on, let me just explain it. So you asked, so I'll tell you. So what am I going to do?
I think what we're saying is, and I think those questions are thought-provoking and important questions to ask folks in our community. I think what we were struck by was the statement on the board that it wasn't a question and that there was no context clues for folks, especially trans folks, to know that this was not your belief, but this is more of a thought experience.
So there are at least one who will speak up in a little bit, but yeah, but
it just seems like they don't want to know the truth, and they're afraid that they don't point it out.
yeah, that's one thing that was interesting is, because someone asked, why are you here? And he's like, oh, well, here, let me explain. He starts to explain. They're like, no, no, our focus is this, right? And so, yeah, here's what I thought was really interesting. The issue about the clues, it's like, well, just looking at this, we didn't have anything to tell us what you're doing here. It looked like you were making a statement. And so you stop and think about that. They do not have in their minds, they do not have an obligation to go find out and understand something. You have the obligation to accommodate them and jump through their hoops, even though you don't even know what those hoops are or where they are, and it can change constantly.
You can't wake up at the sixth story of a building. Oh, I know what they're thinking.
Yeah. Oh, that's the sociology department. Oh, well, here they must, and here let me do whatever I need to do to accommodate them. And so, and as we're about to see in the next clip, even willingness to accommodate, they don't care. And so, but yeah, anything else in that clip that jumped out at you?
Yes, she said something about it being his belief. Like, I wasn't sure get exactly what she said, but it was the problem that he might believe this to be true. Because the last thing she said something about his belief. So her issue is that he might have a different belief from her. So you're not allowed to have a belief that differs from this particular group. in our
Yeah.
society. I just believe
And
there was a statement, it was, I'm question, are there two genders? Yeah, there are two genders.
did you also notice the numbers? They didn't just come down one or two people. They didn't, originally had 6 up there. There's like 12 right now.
Yeah.
They recruited
Mhm.
to come down and ensure they got the majority. Yes, they are.
And if you did something about it, they would stop it, you know. I think the time for talking is over, really. They're not listening. They're standing in my space. They're attacking us.
Yeah. One thing that I thought was interesting. So at this point, they've already come down and said, what are you doing? And he's explained, well, it's a critical thinking exercise. Well, one of the first things someone said in this clip is, why are you here? Are you trying to cause trouble?
Yes.
No, he just told you it's a critical thinking exercise.
Yeah. It's critical thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll find out it's not true.
Yeah. And well, and like I said before, very much like a cult. You're not allowed to question. The cult doesn't have to justify. You need to be shut down. Yeah. And so, yeah, let's take a look because, and one of the things that I do want us to pay attention to is how he's reacting and engaging them. Because there are a few points in here that I'm just like, I don't know if I would have kept my cool. And so, but very important, how you react and how you respond. And we'll talk a little bit more of that in a little bit. So.
Okay, would you be more comfortable if it was a question? Like if I put a question mark, okay, I'm more than happy to put a question at the end.
A question is a question and not a statement.
More than happy to,
Some type of warning or a statement of like what you're doing on another board so people can walk by and like try and understand that. Because from afar, it looks,
This is a thought experiment.
Yeah.
This
is what we're asking people.
I'm more than happy to do that.
And then that way it can kind of,
I'm more than happy to do that. I only have one board, but I'm more than happy to put on, this is a thought experiment and put a question mark.
you can write that.
If I put a question mark, I could, I don't know, I'm worried that people wouldn't be able to see it. But I'm more than happy, if I put a question mark at the end and then I put another one, it's not really, it is a thought experiment, but it's more of an exercise / game starts thought experiment. If I put that on the end, would all of the concern vaporize?
No, probably not, because we're talking about real humans with their lived experience and their positionality, their identities, and sort of I might have a very different personal feeling walking by because it doesn't target my identity specifically. So we're just sort of here to sort of advocate and elevate who might be harmed by a statement.
Yeah, they came down and were like, look, whenever someone's just looking on, they don't know what you're doing here. This could be very offensive. Okay, well, what if I make it so that they do know what's going on and that I'm not making a statement? What if I, do everything I need to do to make clear that I'm not here advocating for this? It's just a thought exercise. Would that be okay? No, it wouldn't. Still not good enough. Because, as you already observed, questioning is not allowed. You cannot have a critical thinking exercise that's going to examine their belief because their belief will fall apart under that. You're not allowed to question. And so, what's interesting is they kind of, and it'll become really apparent here in a little bit, but they really tipped their hand that they didn't come down there to find out what's going on and see what's up. She just said they came down there to advocate. They said it from the rooftop. We're going to come disrupt you. And I'd be really curious to know, I think there is a full length of like the actual activity. If he kind of knew what was coming and ended it early so that, it wasn't like right in the middle and they're coming down with, other students, they get ugly. Because whenever they come approaching, obviously there's not an exercise in progress. But, they did not come down to be like, hey, what's going on here? They came down to tell him what he needs to do, and he needs to think, and he needs to believe. And that's that.
And I think, to me, that's what is so free and open about Christianity is that God can take your questions. He can take your doubts. He encourages you to think it through, not just to blindly obey. It's an act of faith, but it's a maturity. It's a lifelong growth.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, and,
so
if you look,
it's the complete opposite of that.
yeah, because if you look all through Scripture, Abraham argues with God, kind of haggles with him over Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Questions him. You have, Moses on a few different occasions questioning and arguing with God. Jacob, name becomes Israel, right? The name Israel itself means struggles with God. So the nation of Israel, God's chosen people, is named struggles with God. In the New Testament, you have several people who are praised. You have an entire group, the Jews in the town of Berea. Whenever in Acts 17, Paul comes through there and he lays in, they didn't go, oh, get out of here, you're teaching about it. No, they said, that's interesting. Okay, let's check it out. And they got out their scrolls and they got out their texts and they researched to see, okay, you're saying this Jesus guy is the Messiah. Let's check this out. And they opened it up to look. And that was commended because that's how Christianity is. That's how God is. Bring the questions. Let's dig in. Let's look. Let's reason. And so, but not so with this religion. So,
How many of their authors that espouse these ideas that they're defending?
A lot. Actually, what's really funny, I don't know if y'all remember a while back, responded to a video where a minister was saying that, I'm trying to remember exactly how they worded it, but they were trying to say that evangelical Christianity is racist because of white privilege and this and that, whatever. And I thought, okay, you're using the ideology of Marxism, critical theory, all of that, came to us from a bunch of German guys. And so you're using the ideas of a bunch of white guys in order to bash on an ideology that comes from the writings and the culture of people of color over in the Middle East, right? Because Jesus and the apostles weren't white, right? The Hebrews in the Old Testament, they weren't white. And so it's just really interesting that the people that much of, not all of, especially recently in the last, say, 50, 60 years, but a lot of this ideology that's grounded in the foundations of it are from white people. Some very racist white people. Marx was horribly racist. And so, all right. Let's see what he gets into in this next clip.
What do you mean by harmed?
Harmed?
Yeah.
Well, people who have been historically and currently oppressed, right, by dominant systems, patriarchy, whiteness, masculinity, all of the systems that harm people who don't fit within those sort of more rigid.
That's why you want a question and not a statement.
Can I also ask,
Now, I just want an answer. That's why you want a question, not a statement?
I think a question is an invitation, right?
More than happy to make it a question.
Participate in this conversation. It's
More than happy to do that.
You're representing, with your identity, a belief, perhaps especially when it's a statement. And so what it looks like is you're out here saying there are two genders. And then anyone who doesn't fall within those two sort of binary boxes.
I'm more than happy to do that.
That's where the harm comes from.
More than happy to say this is a thought experiment. No, let me just finish. More than happy to do that. But it seems that if I did that, that would not be enough.
But you might have.
But then I
might not be the person to, again, I think asking folks who hold those identities, sort of if that is enough. So asking queer students, asking trans students, asking gay students, if you're asking about race or poverty or religion of people who are part of those groups can really inform you better than I can.
again,
Right.
well, and I'm wondering if she happens to hold some position that they all would naturally look to her, if she's faculty or if she's some administrative position, if it's something, because everybody kind of seems to be willing to let her, step out. But again, what's the harm? Oh, well, let me talk in circles and not actually say anything. Yeah. Oh. No, and it's, give them that political answer. Well, it comes back around to the idea of, well, in the systems of power, these historically marginalized people, it's like, okay, no, you're saying that there was someone who was harmed. How, in what way was that person harmed? That's,
And the question was on gender. That has nothing to do with poverty, oppression.
Yeah.
Any of those things.
Well, and what's interesting, and this is something we've talked a little bit about before in the past, she doesn't explicitly say it here, but I have the nagging suspicion that what's underlying her statements isn't just, well, someone who's living that, maybe they'd have a better insight. Right? I mean, the whole walk a mile in somebody's moccasins, idea. Now, ingrained in this ideology is what the fancy term is standpoint epistemology. That you can only know something if you occupy the correct perspective. So if it's an issue of race, only those who are victims of racism have the ability to speak with authority about racism. So if you haven't experienced it, shut your mouth. You need to get one of them to inform you about what you're supposed to, because they're in the special position to know. Same thing with men and women. Men, this is one of those, why whenever it comes to abortion, right? Men, shut up and go away. Only women can have a say in this because only women know what it's like. Only women know what they're going through. Same idea with virtually anything, if it has to do with feminism, some kind of issue, sexist issue. This is why in the Me Too thing, you got this idea of believe all women. Because if a woman says, I was abused, and a man says, okay, where's the evidence? No, shut your mouth and believe her. Because she's the woman, she's the one who's in the position to know. That's the idea of standpoint epistemology. If you're in the standpoint of the victim, then you're the one who has the superior claim to knowledge. And that's why she would point and say, I'm not the right one to answer this because she's not trans. And so you need to go talk to someone else because they're the ones who have the special knowledge, not me. And even though that's not what was explicitly stated, the things I've read, the things I've seen, the things I've heard coming from authors in so-called scholars in the fields and whatnot, that is a facet of this ideology. And so
she's being attacked because she's a feminist, and here's this white male that's telling her something that she may or may not agree with, but she's in the position, I'm a woman, you're not going to tell me.
mm-hmm.
She seems to come off like that.
Yeah.
Even though I don't know.
You notice nobody's ever asked him what he did.
Yeah. They're just assuming. Yeah.
Because you can be trans and look like that and do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Nobody's silly.
Yeah.
No, really.
No. Okay, this next one,
Right. I'm going to use.
I was born Mary Ann, now I'm Mark.
this next one is definitely, I thought, I was like, wow, okay.
You wanted to say, I wanted to hear her through.
No, I get it. And I'm just wondering, are any of you all trained professionals in trauma-informed care? If a transgender individual were to come to the space and participate, and then there was a triggering response where they needed emotional support, are you ready to support that? Because this conversation can bring up a lot of emotions, and the people that are kind of working within it could be really triggered. But if no one's there as like an advocate or support, it could be pretty detrimental to the community you're asking. So I just want to like frame that if you're not having like an advocate there as someone that can like be an emotional support or regulation for the people that are potentially harmed or triggered in this conversation, whether they're participating or not, like that's a potential thing to think about and could be a flaw in the system, because you need to have someone to be able to support that emotionally, mentally, and for people's trauma. So if you're not, it's kind of like these people might leave and feel like without any support or any understanding of what they just went through.
I'm an intellectualist and I need a support person that triggered me.
I guess I have a question. So what do they mean by trigger? Does that mean I get mad?
Yes.
I get hurt? I don't agree?
So,
Because
I mean,
that's a lot.
well, and
You've got,
yeah.
you've got to create a safe space for everyone but this guy.
Well, and that's one thing, because I've actually talked to people who have actually gone through, and this is one of the things where it's like, if you've actually gone through some traumatic experience, and you legitimately have some kind of, PTSD, and you come across something that triggers you, that's what's kind of meant by triggered. Is the word, the idea of being triggered actually comes from PTSD, from people who have post-traumatic stress disorder. I forget what they call it now. They've actually changed the name.
And that I can see. Now that you
Yeah.
would want, but you also can.
However,
prepare for every possible thing.
this particular belief system has taken that idea and stretched it out to anything that is going to, make you feel uncomfortable, is triggering. And I mean, that's the thing that just blows my mind. So in order to have a public discussion, you have to have trained therapists, psychology people on hand to deal with someone who can't handle encountering an idea they disagree with. Dude, then get out of college. Like, go lock yourself in your house, because that's the world. This actually seems to me to get down to the issue of what do you believe about the nature of the world and the nature of people? See, because the kind of progressive social justice view, the ideology it comes from, has the idea that people are basically good. It's the environment, it's the systems that are the problem. So if we fix those, then people will automatically, naturally go be good people, because have that in us, that's more towards what we are meant for. So you're not assuming that people are out to get you and selfish and all that kind of stuff. Well, Christianity teaches the exact opposite. Christianity teaches, no, we're fallen, we're broken, we're prideful, we're selfish, we're sinful. That's just the natural state of humanity, and we have to train ourselves to be better. And so, if you're thinking, hey, I'm supposed to go through life feeling safe, then, I need my psychological bubble wrap around me. Whereas you look in the Bible and you go, this world ain't safe. This world is fallen and sinful. And, nature's trying to kill me and the other people are trying to get one over on me. This ain't a safe place to be. And I shouldn't expect a safe place. And I should just be thankful when I actually find one, right? That's the Christian perspective. And so they're coming from this other view.
People that like have a shooting in their neighborhood, and they talk to the neighbors, well, I never thought it would happen in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody thinks that oh, this is awful because it happened in my neighborhood. It's not supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why not?
Yeah.
Why not there and not down in the poverty place? Why
Right.
not in this nice neighborhood?
Yeah, it can happen anywhere, because that's human nature. One thing I thought was interesting is the total rejection of personal responsibility here. That it's not, up to each and every one of us to encounter the world and choose how we're going to react and process it and deal with it. No. We have to be wrapped in psychological bubble wrap. One of my favorite quotes, and I remember coming across it in high school, and you probably heard it a gazillion times all over the place, is Eleanor Roosevelt. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. They don't believe that. They think that is false and that is not true. Because if they believe that, you don't need a therapist in case someone gets triggered, because you already have it ingrained in your mind that whenever you encounter something you don't like, you just go, I'm not going to allow that to affect me. It's up to you. And so.
Still a position of privilege. Their group gets to have a therapist on hand whenever they're triggered. But people who have discussions about ideological ideas get attacked.
Well, I'm like, did they have someone on hand in case he was triggered by them yelling profanities?
Hey, if I get triggered, do you guys have a therapist on hand for me?
But by the way, let me go and issue a trigger warning. As you've probably noticed in a clip or two already, I have tried to censor. There might be a clip where I wasn't entirely successful. So just a warning in case my censoring of the language missed. So. Yeah, okay, moving along.
Yeah,
Just
and we
to
know,
think
and we know people who are in the gender minority experience higher rates of suicidal ideation, higher rates of anxiety and depression, and like they're seeing messages like this all throughout their lives. And so campus is supposed to be a safe space where everyone can exist freely in their own identities and who they are, and be learning and be talking about these really, really important things within our culture and society. And by walking through this community member that we care about that should be in class today, learning about how to take care of their community and how to support marginalized individuals like themselves and others can't participate today because they saw that message.
Yeah.
And that's what we mean by harm. And honestly, I don't even think adding a question mark is enough. I think it should be more of what is your perspective on gender identity? Because then you're opening up the question, or gender in general, right? Because we know that it's not just about identity, it's about who that person is. And by really framing it in the binary, that's where there's harm.
It's also, you can't ask a specific question
Mm-mm.
unless it's affirming their point of view. You can't question at that point.
Well, that's the point. You don't get to frame it. Even to have the exercise do anything at all, you have to frame it in their ideology. If it's not framed, which already is assuming they're right, then you don't. Then no, you can't do it. You shouldn't do that. Some of the things that just blew my mind that she said, having gone to, college, campus is supposed to be a safe space where people can exist freely in their own identity. Dude, college was an ideological Wild West where your identity is being challenged and your ideas and beliefs are, being challenged and spoken against left and right. And you're discovering your identity and figuring stuff out. This idea of it being a safe space, unless of course you have the wrong identity or the wrong ideas. If you're a white male who's professing different ideas, you don't get the safe space.
What identity you have to identify.
And so,
If you look at the statistics, it wasn't, and still isn't.
just the way, again, the whole thing is built around their ideology. She said that these people, they had friends who had to leave. She said they should be in class learning how to take care of their community and how to support marginalized individuals. Is that the purpose of college? That's not the purpose of college. The purpose of college is to go get you some education so that you actually have some marketable skills to actually, you want to talk about taking care of your community, go learn something that you can do something in your community, right?
It's a marginalized person. I could be for one thing, and you could be for another.
I think there's a marginalized.
I've never cared to actually look into the genealogy. I might actually have a high enough percentage of Native American that I'm marginalized.
If you have any percentage.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So, but and again, we get a comment that she makes about harm. right? The idea of this harm came back up. She said that they have some friends who can't participate. They had to go home because they saw that message. And that's what we mean by harm.
Well, and the thing is that they should be in class. The thing is, if they were in class, they wouldn't have noticed that.
Yeah.
They were on the road.
Well, what you do, even if you think, oh, look at those bunch of white, hateful bigots, you look out the window and you go, look at those bunch of white, hateful bigots. I got to get to class.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's it. And you're done. Why would you have to go home? Oh, I'm so triggered. I can't even go to class. What's broken in your mind that's how that gets processed? That's not healthy. Something's not right.
Thinking like back in college, if I went and told my professor, I just can't do school this summer, make me upset. I need to go home.
Yeah. All right. Well.
I've gotten so much care from that.
Mhm.
You know, it's been overflowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They'll never change until somebody stops supporting.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep this moving along. I love this next part. This is so much fun.
Can I put in like my 2 cents as a non-binary person?
Yes.
Cool. I am gender non-conforming. I use they them pronouns. Do you know what that means?
I believe so, yes.
Are you aware of like the theory of social constructivism?
Yes.
So
I'm a gender studies scholar.
Okay. What's really funny right there is he's not lying. Technically, he is not lying whenever he says, yeah, I'm actually a gender studies scholar. He is, by training, he's a philosopher. He's a doctor, and his area of expertise is philosophy. However, he, along with 2 other scholars who are not gender studies scholars, submitted a handful of papers to gender and feminist study journals and got them accepted. So he actually is a published scholar in the area of gender studies. And so I think this video is probably about like 3 minutes or so. I had to edit it down. I wanted to play the whole thing. It was like 8 minutes, but I couldn't do it. I had to edit it down. But I love what they did and exposed the whole just fraud that this gender studies thing is.
At American colleges, if you're a faculty member and you want more pay or a promotion, you must publish articles in journals like these. Since the journals supposedly have high standards, some researchers were thrilled to get an email from a journal that said,
I have now closely considered the revisions of your manuscript, Dog Park. And
they're laughing because they just pulled off a hoax.
And will recommend its publication in Gender, Place, and Culture.
They'd sent so-called research to 20 prominent journals in women and gender studies, race studies, sexuality, fat, and queer studies for this journal of social work.
We rewrote a section of Mein Kampf as intersectional feminism, and this journal has accepted it.
7 of their crazy papers got in.
We got a paper in, and it's probably the craziest thing we wrote.
James Lindsay's a mathematician. Peter Boghossian teaches philosophy. Helen Pluckrose runs an academic magazine in London. They didn't really expect that the Journal of Gender, Place, and Culture would accept their paper, in which they claimed to have closely examined genitals of nearly 10,000 dogs to learn about rape culture and queer performativity. Do they just not read these things and accept?
Oh, no, they read them, very
in
carefully.
detail.
How could they believe you examined 10,000 dog genitals?
We have no idea. In fact, in the first draft of that paper, we were like, there's no way they're going to believe that we did this.
We think studying topics like gender, race, and sexuality is worthwhile, and getting it right is extremely important.
These aren't your fields.
No. Which should have made it more difficult.
Much more difficult to fool the journals, but
papers started getting in.
You've got to be me that this happened.
This shouldn't have been possible. What appears beyond dispute is that making absurd and horrible ideas sufficiently politically fashionable can get them validated at the highest levels of academic grievance studies.
We flattered what they wanted to hear, and then they told us that it was an important contribution to feminist geography.
Maybe these are just mills that accept every paper.
No, one journal we hoaxed was Hypatia, which is one of the 2 leading feminist journals.
It has about an 18% acceptance rate.
No university said, we're not going to use these journals. No editor publicly said, we have to raise our standards.
Think about if you did this to civil engineers with bridge building. They would have thanked us, right? Because they're driving over the bridges with their families, so they don't want the bridges to collapse.
But the grievance study journal editors, instead of admitting that they published nonsense, criticized the hoaxers. You clearly engaged in flawed and unethical research.
That was our whole point.
A dozen of Peter's fellow professors wrote an anonymous letter attacking him. And the school newspaper ran it with this cartoon depicting Peter as a clown. You're part of the clown car of hoax writers engaging in fraudulent, time-wasting, anti-intellectual activities.
Right. They just describe their own discipline.
The best I can tap into is that there's this kind of like religious architecture in their mind where privilege is sin. So you can come up with these really nasty arguments like, well, let's put white kids in chains in the floor. It's an educational opportunity. And if you frame it in terms of overcoming privilege, then it's right in.
And my collaborators and I are left-wing academics who can now say with confidence, these people don't speak for us.
The scholarship in these disciplines is utterly corrupted. They've placed an agenda before the truth.
Yeah, all three of those folks are left-leaning, at one point, because he was asking, aren't y'all just a bunch of, rabid conservative Republicans? They're like, no, I've voted Democrat my whole life. I'm definitely, but, they see nonsense, or they know nonsense when they see it. And that's one of those things because, whenever people go, oh, well, this is scholarly, that has this scholarship. This is what, I forget who coined the term. It's called idea laundering. So what happens is you rewind, 30, 40 years or so, and none of this stuff was being taken seriously. They couldn't get these things published in journals. So they made their own journals. And now that they have journals and they have published things, well, now you cite and refer to someone else, and they cite and refer to you. And now you have citations going around. Oh, okay, well, here's this academic work, and it's citing this other work. And then as that builds, now you've actually created a self-authenticating, system, and it's idea laundering. You take something that is just so completely absurd, like taking a chapter out of Mein Kampf and rewording it to be a feminist paper, and, run it through a journal, and now all of a sudden, hey, it is, academic, intellectualism, because it's published and peer-reviewed, and it's all just a big scam. So, okay, I'm actually going to skip this next one. She goes into a long rant about social constructivism and gender studies and why there's more than two genders, and she actually lays it out, but it's a couple minutes long. Social constructivism is basically the idea that, and I'm sure I'll probably get this not entirely accurate, and so there'll probably be criticism of it but it's basically the idea that the systems, and not just the systems, like virtually anything, is we believe it to be the way it is because that's the way society told us it is. So remember, you have to remember, these people see things in terms of power structures. And so, for instance, one thing she talks about is, she, it is a woman. She says that she's non-binary and her pronouns are them and they. Okay, no, she's a woman. And she claims that the only reason he identifies as a man is because a doctor assigned him the label of male whenever he was born. And the reason why the male-female thing exists is because those in power defined it that way. And social constructivism, this works with everything. There was actually some controversy going on, and it was actually really funny to watch people falling all over themselves. The idea that 2 + 2 = 4, well, that's just because white, male-dominated, heterosexual patriarchy power structures told you that's what math was. And people were trying to show ways that 2 + 2 doesn't have to equal 4. And of course they failed because it's just true that 2 + 2 = 4. But that's social constructivism. That ideas that, yeah. Well, and that's one of the ways they did it, is you change the definition, you round it, right? I mean, are we in a recession? No. What's a recession? The only reason we believe a recession is one thing and not another is because those in power told us so. It was socially constructed, right? That's social constructivism. Everything is just a matter of those in power said so and constructed that idea. So that's essentially it. I love this.
I'm much younger than you.
Oh, he missed. Oh, wait.
So I'm much younger than you. These are all, this is all very.
I skipped that. Yeah, skipping that one. I know, right? Well, it's just you old people don't understand these new ideas. That's all that is. And so I love this because he misgenders, which, by the way, just the term misgendering frames everything from their point of view. Because from my point of view, if you call a man she, you just misgendered him. So anyway.
I just want to make sure, so this is what I want. I don't want, the reason that I'm more than happy to engage you. The reason that I said that is you have how many people here? 15, I'm guessing. No, the reason I said that is because I don't want you to walk away and someone to say, you didn't give me a chance to talk. So I didn't give her a chance to talk before, but that's only because I was listening to what you were going to say. And I realized that the classes here aren't a lot of time. And the reason that I switched from what she had, and I'm more than happy to listen to her, is because I don't want people.
They just told you their pronouns and their lived experience.
Okay, then okay, so instead of getting.
Experience of someone that doesn't conform to what
Okay, so this individual just told me that, and I'm trying to be reasonable, and I think it's better to have a conversation than for you guys to give me the finger and yell fuck. So you wanted to say something, go ahead.
It's already been, you.
Aren't you
No,
the
I
guys
think
that made up a bunch of
maybe
academic data
important to address that she did, like, you just called this person a.
Okay.
And they just told you their gender.
Okay, well, I apologize, and I say they.
That's the harm being done that we were talking about.
Do you accept my apology? Okay.
It's the generation, it's a generational, education. If you
Okay, so
and want
you're
to
right.
learn, that's great. I love that, and I accept your apology.
Apology accepted. By her, no one else seems to care. They're all just mad at him. Even though, and was it you that caught it? That other girl.
Whatever politically correct girl called her she.
Yeah. In trying to scold him for using the wrong pronoun, she used the wrong pronoun. And so that was just fun.
I noticed I started saying yes ma'am and yes sir more.
Oh yeah. Me too. And that's, I don't know. I don't know if that's probably a,
Tell somebody what you are. How can you get on to them when I look like a woman and somebody calls me a woman and I get mad and say, no, really, I'm a man. How can I get angry with them because I look like a woman?
yeah.
My personal pronouns are handsome and intelligent. You say, handsome sir, that's how you address me.
Right. Whenever people mistakenly assume, whenever people mistakenly assume that I'm a fashion model, look, I get it. All right. I can't help that. I'm not going to hate them for it.
She had every right to assume and call him out for being old.
Yeah.
And not getting it. So she's young and not getting it. So could you say young and no? I mean, it's fair. It's equal.
She has youth privilege, right? And he's marginalized old person. So, yeah. Yeah. I love it. He apologizes, and even though she accepts the apology, it is clearly not accepted by the others. And I want to give her some credit because she's being really nice and sweet, and she, but everyone else is like, you just called, yeah. So, okay, this last clip. Ooh, we are really over, but this is kind of the main where it really comes together. And so, watch this, and then we'll hopefully put a bow on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I understand that you believe I can't remember where that, over there she moved, but I understand that you believe this stuff, and we live in a democracy, and other people don't have those beliefs. And I want to ask people if the reasons they have for their beliefs are justified. And this is that experiment.
And your thought experiment, we actually have to go. We're not part of the thought experiment. We're all social workers, and we saw this harm being done, and we just wanted to come here with curiosity and also some information.
And do you feel that you've spoken? Do you feel that if anybody else has something to say that you haven't had an opportunity to speak?
Do you feel like you've learned anything or taken?
But that doesn't answer my question. I just asked if anybody else would like to speak. If you'd like to speak, I'm standing here. Okay.
But I think to Joel's point, we hope that this was informative and helpful, and sorry if saying hurt your feelings. And
No, it didn't hurt my feelings.
good, I'm glad, because our student who was hurt, we're worried about them, and potentially many, many others. And so that's why we came down to talk to you, just because we have a personal connection.
Well, I'm glad. Isn't it better to have a conversation with someone than to?
Yes.
I mean, isn't that what the whole enterprise should be about?
It's not safe for everybody to have that conversation.
Sometimes it's hard to just have a simple
not safe.
conversation.
Yeah.
Especially when you're doing it like every fucking day of your life.
Yeah. This is something we're fighting for and advocating for. This is our job and what we care about, what we're passionate about. So sometimes it's hard to keep all those emotions in when we see someone that we care about being harmed.
And do you think that the best way for people to understand, what is the best way for people to understand your point of view?
This right now, showing up.
Thank you. Yeah. Advocating.
Advocating for the people that may feel like they don't have a voice.
Okay, so the people who watch this, because this is being videoed, do you think that the people who watch this, who don't agree with you, as a result of having watched this, will then agree with you?
I'm not asking them to agree with me.
But don't you want to facilitate social change?
I'm asking you to have a different perspective to understand where we're coming from, because we came down here to try and understand where you're coming from.
Did you?
I don't think that anyone.
Did you really though?
Decide if this is.
Okay, but you have to please be honest with me. Is that really why you came down, to understand?
Yes. We were
Okay, and what is your understanding of why I'm doing this?
Let's care about how you're.
It's not impact.
What I'm sorry, I haven't heard from you. What is it?
It's not. I just want to tell you, we don't care about your thought experiment. We care about
the impact
that it's having on.
Okay, so you didn't come down to understand why I'm doing this then?
We came down here to tell you like what you're doing is harming others.
Right, so you didn't come down to understand. That's why I asked you to please be honest.
I really, truly do want to understand why this even exists.
Because we didn't want to know how your game works doesn't mean we weren't coming down here.
So what is it that you understand for why I'm doing this? If you said you came down to understand why am I doing this? No, but this is, you've made a claim. You've made a claim. Right. This is what?
Maybe you'll watch the video and have some.
What do you think the result of people watching this video will going to be?
What's your intent? What is the impact it's having?
That's all right.
What harm is being done?
Already kind of thinning out.
Yeah, I was pointing out a while ago that one turn is blocked to the back, whatever it was afraid she was going to be asked questions.
One thing, and I actually meant to highlight it, it would have been so much fun. I've watched several of these, and in many of them, I don't know why it is or what's going on, but there's a shot of someone in the back, like in the background, just chowing down, watching what's going on. And there was someone in that one who was behind him and just sitting there, just awesome. Okay, all of that. And again, they keep talking about the harm, right? He says, "Well, isn't this what university is about? Having conversations?" And the response was, "Well, some people it's not safe for them to have this conversation." What's unsafe? What's the harm? Yeah, they might find out the truth. They've never articulated what it is that the danger and the harm is.
16 people screaming at one guy.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of civil harm there.
Yeah. And what we see from what they're putting forth is that the way to get people to understand, according to them, And what they're doing is not persuasion or rational discussion. It is to advocate and just tell them, you're wrong and you need to stop it.
They said it.
Yeah.
We came down here to make you
Yeah.
understand what we think you should think.
Yeah, we don't care about your adult game and thought experiment. We came down here to tell you to stop it because you're harming people. That's just what she said.
Coming back to this happens in several, like, these people feel like they have to advocate for other, whatever people, like those people aren't strong enough, courageous enough, brave enough, intelligent enough to speak for themselves.
That's one of the things that's always, yeah.
That's bothering me on multiple things. It's like, I can speak for myself. I don't need someone to stand up and speak.
I've actually seen, and it's great. If you've never seen it, look up, his name's Ami Horowitz, and he does man on the street interview kind of stuff. And one of the things he did was about voter ID. And he goes to Berkeley and talks to a bunch of white liberal college students about, is voter ID racist? And then he gets their answers, and then he goes to Harlem and interviews a bunch of black people in the projects asking about if voter ID is racist. And the answers that the white liberal students give is racist, because it's, oh, well, those poor black people, they can't get an ID. You know, they don't have a car to get to the, you know, to the DMV, or they don't know how to use a computer. They don't have internet, and they're, you know, this is all this kind of stuff. And whenever he's telling it to these black people, they're like, what? You know, no, I got an idea. I got it right here. You know, I know where the DMV is. It's 2 blocks that way. Right. I mean, just like, don't have the internet. Who don't have the internet on their phone? Everybody knows got an iPhone, right? And I mean, it's just, but the idea that, oh, you poor people.
You poor black people.
Yeah.
Smart white people to help you out.
Yep.
Not racist. Nope.
Yep. I love that. The we don't care about your thought experiment. You know, it's that we came for the impact and the harm that is being done, and it just goes to show. And I wonder how many of them walked away thinking we showed him. Yeah. Because he asked, he said, people watching this video, how do you think they're going to respond? You know, and, you know, they just walk away, and he's like, because he knows exactly how people who watch that video are going to respond, what they're going to think. And at no point did they ever actually articulate what harm was. They said, no, we just came down here because we want you to know the harm you're doing. But you never actually were able to say what the harm was. So, yeah.
If there is actually harm happening, there's a lot of people walking by.
Mm-hmm.
If there was actually harm happening, I think you'd have a crowd forming, not just this is the group that came down and they're slowly dwindling. You'd actually have a crowd forming.
Right. Well, and I mean, okay, let's just say, for instance, there happens to have been a couple of students who legitimately suffered from gender identity disorder, who had been abused or mistreated or something somehow because of that in their past. So they legitimately have some kind of triggering, you know, PTSD kind of response to seeing that sign. Okay, that's 2 out of how many hundreds in the building and passing by, you know? And so, yeah. All right, just some final thoughts that I want to mention. And I don't know how to say this without it sounding derogatory, but I couldn't help but notice the immaturity inherent in this ideology. The things that they're claiming, these are things that I'm having to teach my girls not to do. We had something the other day where the 2 little ones, you know, I mean, they're 7 and 8, got in some argument. One of them closed the door. The other one didn't like the fact that she closed the door and just like ran across the house crying, you know, and it's like, babe, what's wrong? She shut the door. Okay. Open the door. I don't understand what the problem is here. Right? And I'm just thinking, this is the mindset they're in. And it's because I'm old. I'm out of touch. Yeah. Right? I mean, There we go. All right. So, okay. I mean, this is, if not immaturity, it's at least a very unhealthy mindset that takes offense and internalizes some kind of hurt at even the smallest. I mean, they invented something called microaggressions, that even if no offense is meant or even no offense is received, you can still perceive offense because of the nature of what it was. I mean, it's ridiculous. One thing, as this ideology is out there, and you hear all kinds of things all over the place going on in schools, going on in court battles, going on in companies, and this and that, all sorts of, Disney taking a stand over here, and, whatever state passing a law over there, and all kinds of stuff back and forth. Do not be confused. This is not about politics. This is a religion. This absolutely is a religion. What was interesting is, in that video about the hoax papers, he said the way that he was able to write the papers is he put himself into he's an atheist, he put himself into a religious mindset and said, okay, if I believed these things religiously, how would I perceive that? And that's how he wrote the papers, because this is a religion. We hear things they say and we think, how can people buy this? How can people think this? The same way that people in what was that, mid-90s, thought that, by committing mass suicide when the Hale-Bopp comet came by, they were going to be ascended to the next plane of existence or something because it was a starship going to take them away. How did people believe that? Because it's a cult. It's a religion. And so we need to understand that. It's not that they have some weird ideas and just need to learn the facts. These are their religious beliefs. And so, I guess real quick, and I could just do a plug for other stuff we've done. How do you deal with these situations? How do you deal with people that have this ideology? How do you handle, conversing and talking and hopefully trying to reach, with some truth into people who do that without having like a professional cult deprogrammer on hand?
I just roll so hard at the therapist.
Or, yeah, calmly. That's one option. Another one is tactics. You remember we did the study on that book on tactics, which basically gets down to, as you saw him doing, stay calm and strategically use questions in order to make them have to justify and defend and to guide them over to the truth. And so non-combative, be inviting, right? That's one thing that's great about questions. It's not questions are not confrontational. Questions invite people into the conversation to talk about themselves and that sort of thing. And you can use questions to lead them to conclusions. And so it's a skill that takes practice, but I think that is probably the best avenue to take. Okay. Oh my goodness, y'all made us go late. Any final questions? Anyone else have any final questions?
One of them said, this is what I get. This is my job. Who's paying them?
There's social. The university. You realize that most universities, administration outnumbers faculty. Like administration positions outnumber teaching positions, like 2 or 3 to 1. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Yeah. I mean, but the amount of deans and social workers and diversity, administrators or whatever they call them, they outnumber the actual teachers, which is the whole reason the university exists in the first place, was the teachers. But okay. We're done. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you. Lord, we thank you for the truth. We thank you that we are not left just tossed to and fro when all these ideas come our way, Lord, but you have given us your word, that you have given us the ability to reason. God, I pray that you help us to have open eyes, that we can see the lies around us, but help us to also have open hearts, that we can care for and love and reach out to those who buy into these false and destructive ideas. In Jesus' name, amen.